Hey guys, today we're doing an LS430. This is a 2003 to 2005. It's going into an IS200 and it's using a manual gearbox. So let's get into it. Right guys, so as discussed, this is an LS430 03 to 05. That makes it the 3UZ with a 6-speed automatic gearbox, the second generation of those. This is an adapted harness, so again, it's a harness that we've taken from the original engine. We've completely stripped it down, cleaned it out, removed everything that's no longer necessary, and added in what is necessary. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to cut to the photos to show you guys exactly what that entails, stripping the whole thing down, building all the new harnesses that we're going to add into the system, and obviously making it plug and play. So let's do that now, and then we'll be back. Right, as I said, what we're going to do today, as per usual, is first we're going to go through the layout of the harness. That's going to go through everything so the customer knows exactly where to plug it in. Then what we're going to do is we're going to move on to the testing, and that's made up of two sections, one with just the ignition on and one with the engine running itself. So without further ado, let's jump into the layout of the harness, and let's focus starting on the ECU box right over here. So the ECU itself, obviously if you have an IS200, the original 3UZ ECU is not going to slide straight down. But there are two options. Either you can get an IS300 ECU box because it has the same, what I refer to as the wedge-shaped ECU. If not, you can actually grind this little lip off and then the ECU slots straight in there. If you are going to grind it off, obviously do remove the two screws that are there, because again, this is a 6-speed. You've only got 2 screws, not 4. And you can slide the entire PCB board out, carry out the grinding, obviously not putting heat into the PCB, and then put it all straight back in again. Okay. So connections, you've got 1, 2, 3 plugs here, and they mainly go to the engine harness, not in its entirety. There are some bits that come from here, but then you have your two, what I refer to as the ECU body plugs, because they require most of the stuff that goes and interfaces with the IS200 plugs. That's where we have our little patch harness over here, so that plugs into your 22 and 28 pin plug that go directly inside there. All right, now then, because it is a 3UZ 6-speed, or the second generation of the 3UZ, obviously it uses CAN communication. So now we have our little device, the CANverter, that converts CAN over to MPX. And MPX is obviously what the IS200/300/Tesla needs to make certain functions work on the dash. Because it operates CAN, the OBD2 also operates via CAN. So in this case, we do actually fit another OBD2 port on here. Obviously we do not have the functionality of being able to interface with the original CAN inside the vehicle, because that is not CAN enabled, because obviously these vehicles were MPX, not CAN based. And as per usual, we do have our little relay to imitate the brake switch from there. Obviously we do this on the IS200s because the manual IS200s do not have the 4-wire brake switch. The auto ones do, and the IS300s do, but not the manual IS200s. So that's why we have that relay on there as well. Then you have the 3 body plugs here. You've got the blue and the gray and the black, and they just go straight in there. And then lastly, we've got our little junction plug over here that should be able to tuck just inside there for you guys when you're ready to put it in. Obviously, you saw a couple of photos, or you will at the end. You'll see a couple of photos of what it looks like when it's inside the case properly, everything in the grommet, the whole 9 yards. Right, so moving on from there, we then have our grommet, which obviously goes straight down into there usually. Our engine's very high, so obviously we cannot plug it into there directly. It's going to come up along here, and then we end up at our first piece of plastic that's keeping the harness in place. 2 mounting points for this one, that section over there and that section over there. Okay, now the first little breakout actually comes out here, just in this little corner here, and that goes to injector 1 and coil 1. So remember, with these engines, Left bank is 1357, right bank is 2468. Okay, so those are the cylinder numbers when you are looking at it, and obviously refer to left from the driver's perspective, and that refer to the right as well. All right, moving along there, then we have a breakout section at the front here. As it's a 6-speed, obviously there's no TPS over there. It's all done by the 6-pin plug on the throttle, which we'll get to in a minute. But we do have the oil control valve for the left bank. So this is part of your VVT-i system. This is actually what makes the cam advance and retard based on what the ECU is asking of it. Moving further down, you then have a little mounting point over there, and it breaks out there to go to the cam sensor at the front. Obviously, this is one of 3 cam sensors. So the 1UZ and the 3UZ VVT-i have 3 cam sensors. One on each inlet cam to measure what the VVT-i solenoids are doing, and obviously one to get the position of the engine for spark, etc., to make it fully sequential. Moving along there, you have 2 little mounting points there, and then obviously these are not original mounting points. One I've just found that are easily unclippable, because obviously we're taking harnesses off every single day, and they come down to there, and then we break out at this particular point over here. Now we are breaking out and going to the aircon plug. So that goes over there. Now, do bear in mind, you can't use the 3UZ 6-speed aircon. They don't actually use an AC magnetic clutch relay like the IS200 does. What you can do, luckily, because the 3UZ and the 1UZ VVT-i are the same block, you can actually either use an LS400 98 to 2000 aircon pump. You could actually use even a 95 to 97 aircon pump, to be brutally honest with you. You can also use a GS430 and an SC430, but only the 2000/2001 to 2005. Okay, none of the LS430 pumps will work because they require a early versions from 2003. They worked with the clutch like normal, but they actually had a valve at the back of the pump to vary the intensity with which it worked at, and obviously that is not controlled via the engine ECU, unfortunately. That's controlled via the AC ECU, so obviously that's why we advise, if you are going to retain aircon, rather get one of those other pumps where you can just plug this straight in and you are all okay. The other 2 sections that break out here are going to be making their way down here. Now, normally in an IS200, you're not going to be using this oil filter housing because this is from an LS430. It has the mid sump and it has the front facing oil filter housing. If you're doing an IS200 swap, obviously you want the front sump and the oil filter housing that goes slightly backwards. This will actually knock on the bar that runs across your chassis legs over here. So this one's not suitable. Anyway, so what would happen there is you'd have the oil pressure switch breaking out there, and it's going to plug in back over here. In our case, it is at the front over here, so I've just taken it through these holes over there, and along with that is your crank sensor. So again, that is down there as well, and all the plugs are different, so you can't really get it mixed up in that regard. Right, so that's that front section over there. What we're going to do now is we're going to move over here. Just going to slide along here, but there's a little open section over there. It just runs along there until we get to the next piece of plastic that's holding everything in place, and that is again mounted with 2 screw bolts, one there and one there. Okay, now first thing that breaks out over here is going to be your cam sensor for your inlet cam for the VVT-i, also injector 3 and coil 3. Moving along there, another breakout over here, and that is going to be to injector 5 and coil 5. Also to your noise filter, which should plug into a noise filter that's bolted onto the inlet manifold at the top here. Moving to the back here, and then obviously we've got injector 7 and coil 7 breaking out there. So really nice and easy. They've split into different sections. So obviously the first one, boom, second one, boom, third one, boom, and then the first injector and coil combo come right out here. Okay. Right, so moving along, at the end of the plastic here, it just goes a little bend over the fuel pulsation damper, not fuel pressure regulator. Remember, these engines are deadhead fuel system. They do not have regulators built onto the motors. The fuel regulation was taken care of inside the tank, and that is the exact same system that works on the IS200, which is why on the 1UZ VVT-i and 3UZ VVT-i, all you've actually got to do is connect this fuel line up to your original IS200 fuel line. And that is it. That's your fuel system complete, because they work in exactly the same way and they maintain exactly the same pressure. I always advise, if your pump is about 15 years old and it's never been changed, probably a good time to change it now while you're getting everything out. Okay. Moving along over here, we're then going to break out at the back here, and the first thing that pops out is going to be our first earth strap. So that's going to bolt on with the M6 bolt on the back over there. Also coming out here is going to be your lambda probe for the left bank. So again, that runs through there. And do bear in mind, guys, there is a metal plate that goes between the exhaust and the block. You you do really have to put that in place because it's the only thing protecting the connector directly touching the exhaust. So if you don't have that in place, you're going to have to make some other plan to keep that connector safe. Otherwise, it's just going to end up either melting or getting so hot and cracking. Okay. Next section that pops out here is going to be your gearbox, and as per usual, we are doing these on a modular harness now, so if you ever change your gearbox, you can just phone us up and we can make you another connector for that, depending on what gearbox you have. So if you're doing a BMW, obviously we change that out just to have a reverse switch on. In this case, they're using a J160, so we do have the speed sensor plug for a J160, and we have the reverse connector for a J160 on there as well, and that runs down through there. And this is all new stuff, so it is all labeled for you guys. So you've got speed and reverse on there, and then gearbox and gearbox over there. Okay, let me just go back here and make sure that I've gone through everything there. Right, okay, moving further along up through here, we then have the connector for our sub harness, and that goes down. I'm going to cut to a picture now. Straight underneath, starter solenoid, knock sensor over there. So that's that section over there. Okay. Only other thing is the main starter cable, so that goes straight to the actual starter motor, bolts onto the starter motor, and goes to the positive of your battery directly. Okay, right, let's go on the other side now, and let's carry on with the harness from there. So, still staying with a black piece of plastic here, we're coming along here, and we have a little breakout over there, and that breaks out to our second earth strap, and that bolts on with the M6 bolt directly to there. So, your two M8 holes, or your one M8 hole here and your two M8 holes there, they're not going to have any bolts in if you've got a 3UZ, so you don't have to worry too much about it. But if you do want to, it's quite useful sometimes to put an earth strap from there. And if you remember on your IS200s, you had a little pipe, the vacuum pipe for the brake master cylinder, and there was actually an earth strap that bolted there that went to the side of the engine over here. So you could use that to put an earth strap on either there or there. It doesn't really make much difference, but it always helps having an extra earth on the engine with Toyotas. They do like that. Also coming out there at the back is going to be your pedal harness. So in this case, again, it is on a sub harness here, little 6-pin DTM plug, and it goes boom and there. So this is designed to go obviously through the firewall and plug directly into the pedal, which you will then mount inside the vehicle. And so obviously if you've taken the engine out, you can just disconnect this in the engine bay, lift the engine out, and not have to worry about disconnecting the pedal inside the vehicle. Moving along now and coming to the end of the black plastic, we then have the next breakout, and that is going to be injector 8 and coil 8 over there. Harness is going to move a little bit forward, another breakout over there, and it's going to go to the ACIS vacuum solenoid plug. It's then going to go to injector 6 and coil 6. Moving further along, it's going to break up over here, and it's going to go to the cam sensor for the right bank. You're going to have your noise filter over there, which again is going to plug into a noise filter on bolted to the inlet manifold there. We're then going to go to injector 4, which is over there, and coil 4 over there. Moving forward again, and remember you've got two mounting points over here, so you can keep your harness with some P-clamps nice and tight against the fuel rail over there. But moving along at the front here, it's going to break out to coil 2, injector 2. It's also going to break out to the coolant temperature sensor over there. Now, you guys won't have a coolant temperature sensor in this one. You'll have a bolt in there. I just put that in there. It's actually a 3UZ non-VVT-i sensor. It fits literally directly in. And so I use it when I do other swaps and so on, and we want to use a temperature sensor to make sure they work. But in your case, you're just going to be using the coolant temp sensor because our little CAN to MPX converter is obviously taking care of the temperature for you. Also coming out here is your 6-pin throttle plug. So that's just one plug that goes in the throttle directly over there. We're also coming out to the oil control valve for the right bank over there. And then coming out over here, we then have our mass airflow sensor. Okay. So it's nice and long. We bring it all the way to break out over here. It normally breaks out down here. We bring it out to break out over here so you guys have lots of length to play around with. Moving down to here, and you'll see it goes down, 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 and breaks out towards the bottom here. It then goes to the lambda plug, which you can see over there. The alternator plug, which is over there, and in this case we've added in the low oil level plug because it's in the wrong place, because remember on LS430 it's got this mid sump, so the oil level sensor is actually on the other side of the engine, so we have to add this in new, but that's fine. It's going to plug directly into your front sump over there. Obviously, you'll notice that I've got just 3 wires between a normal alternator to that one. Again, this is obviously a 6-speed, so it comes with a 4-pin plug. Do remember that on the LS430, GS430, when they have these square plugs, they actually only use 3 of the 4 wires. If you take a look, you'll see one of the pins is not populated. It's actually only the crown, funny enough, that uses all 4 of these wires with the 3UZ, and it actually uses the ECU to control the alternator. So just be careful if you guys are swapping around alternators. LS GS430, so LS03 to 05, GS05 to 07. Yes, you can use those because you can just adapt the obviously the 3 wires that are in there to the older style alternator and vice versa. But be careful with those crown alternators because they are very different and they do not work with these 3 wires. They do require the ECU to control them. Right, so that's pretty much it in terms of the layout. Again, it is really super and simple. So again, once you've bolted all these plastics down, it kind of dictates where everything goes. The rest is all relatively straightforward, and the way they designed it, Toyota did a good job. It's very difficult really to get everything in the wrong place, but yeah, hopefully this video helps you guys when you are trying to put your harness back on again. Right, so my next step is to get the engine warmed up, because obviously we're going to be doing things by looking at coolant temperature, etc, etc. I'm going to get the engine warmed up, we're going to pop back, and we're going to start going through the testing procedure. So I will see you in a second. Right guys, so now we're back for the testing of the engine, and as I said earlier, it's going to be broken up into 2 sections, one with just the ignition on and one with the engine actually running. So first of all, we're going to go through all of the tests so you know exactly what we're going to be doing, and then we'll jump into the testing with the ignition on. So starting right at the top here, we've got ambient temperature, and that means the outside temperature. It is displayed on the climate control cluster over here, so we'll pop over there and make sure that we're seeing a reading over there. We'll come back to the cluster and we'll look for the check engine light, the battery light, and the oil light to make sure that they are lighting up. Then what we're going to do is we are going to bridge the reverse switch on here, which is going to cause the beeping on the dash like you normally get on an IS200. That'll tell me that the reverse circuit from the connector all the way into the car is absolutely fine. Then we're going to move over to the speedo. So I'm going to use my device to force feed a signal through the speed sensor plug directly to here, and we should see the speedo needle go up and down as I do that. Once you've done that, we're going to go over to the OBD2 machine, make sure it is communicating. Again, this is plugged into our specific OBD2 connector inside the actual ECU box. The one inside the car will no longer be used for the actual engine. Obviously, you can still use that to communicate with other systems in the car like ABS, etc. Once you've done that, we're going to use the OBD2 machine to test the fuel pump. Now remember, in this case, the fuel pump is being controlled via the ECU. So I can actually activate the fuel pump from here. I have done a really nice video about the fuel pump systems and how they work, but a little caveat with this one, because of the fact that we're interfacing with the CAN data, you'll actually notice when I put the ignition on, this one actually primes the fuel pump. Okay, so that is not a Toyota or Lexus feature. That is something that we have added onto the system. Okay, so don't expect it with anything else, only with remapped ECUs that we do over here. Next up, we're then going to go to the AC system. So what I want to see basically is our little device that's CAN to MPX converter, that's taking care of the AC. So we're feeding in the pressure switch from the AC pressure switch on the IS200 into that. We're feeding the signal via MPX from the car into that, and then we're using that to then output and activate the relay. We're then also telling the 3UZ ECU that the AC is pressed, so you'll actually be able to see on here that the AC state goes from off to on when I press the button, and that's what we're going to be testing there as well. Then, because of the relay that we've done for the brake switch, that is going to be the next test. So I'm going to supply the brake pedal wire with 12 volts, and then you'll hear the relay click, and you'll see that the brake light switch or brake switch goes from off to on the OBD2 machine as well. That's all the tests with the ignition on. Then we're going to actually start the car up, and what we're looking for is the starter circuit. So because it's plug and play, I want to make sure that when we turn the key, that obviously the engine starts up, that I know the whole starter circuit from the key all the way to the starter motor itself is 100%. Once it's started up, then we're going to come and we're going to look at this valve over here. So this is the ACIS system, and what I've done is I'll put a link at the top. I've done a really good video to show you guys exactly how the system works. I've actually pulled the whole intake apart so you can see inside what it looks like, what it does, and obviously why it's so important, because you lose a lot of low down torque if that system has failed. The little trick here is because you have to remove the intake manifold to refit the harness that goes underneath to the knock sensors in the starter solenoid, that is a good time to test your vacuum solenoid valve for the ACIS system. You can provide power and ground to this little plug over here, which goes directly to that valve, and you should hear it click. It is polarity sensitive, so if you put it one way and it doesn't work, try the other way before you do it. But if you're using the harness over here, in this particular case, the black wire, which then goes to our black wire over there, that is your 12 volts. And your white wire, which goes to our blue with the white over there, that is your ground, because the ECU is grounding it out and it gets supplied at 12 volts from the system. So if you want to know, that's the way in which to try it out. Then we're going to come and we're going to test the drive-by-wire. So basically, I'm just going to press the pedal. That's basically it. Just if the engine revs, we know the drive-by-wire is working as it should do. Then I'm going to go back to the machine here and we're going to test the oil control valve. So what I mean by that, if you've seen other videos, you do it every single time. Basically, the oil control valves at the front here, they're going to advance or retard the cam. They're going to make it sound really lumpy, like a lumpy big cam engine. And then I'm going to do each bank at a time, and that tells me that both of those particular oil control valves are working and doing what they're supposed to. Then I'm going to go around and one by one pull out all the injectors. Now, the reason I'm doing that is so that you can actually see that the engine is misfiring as I do each and every single one. Okay. Then we're going to come back here and we're going to look at the tacho and make sure that we're getting a signal through on the tacho and making sure that that is working correctly. And we'll also look at the coolant temp at the same time. Then the last thing I want to do is go through the diagnostics and tell you what you can and can't do, and obviously give you some hints and tips on diagnostics if you need them. Right, so let's jump into the ignition on test, and the easiest way to do that is to take the key, insert the key, and turn the ignition on, funnily enough. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to pop over and go over to our ambient temperature. So as you can see there, we are displaying 14 degrees. Okay, so obviously it wasn't working. If you ever had it before, you'll see it displays the E for error or sometimes just 2 dashes. But obviously we are getting an actual temperature through there, so that's perfect. Moving over here, we've got our check engine light, we've got our battery light, and we've got our oil light. Now, as you notice in the corner here, that is very, very dim. This is a feature with the 6 speeds that I've come across, and that is they're not strong enough for some reason to supply an incandescent bulb like what you get on here with enough power to fully light up that. So I do advise people to change the check engine light for a LED bulb, and that'll return to the same brightness then as all the other lights on your dash. But as you can see, yeah, so charge light, battery light, everything is there. That's great. Right, so now what we need to do is we need to test the reverse switch. And there you go, you can see that little beep of the reverse switch, which is a common feature of those. So we'll just pull that out there. So yeah, reverse switch, absolutely fine. So I know right from the connector, from the terminals, all the way to inside the car, fantastic. If that's plugged into a J160, stick in reverse, your reverse lights are gonna come on, no problem. Right, let's move over to our speed signal now. So again, I'm using my device, and this device is quite cool because obviously there's 3 wires for your speed sensor. It is a Hall effect style sensor, and that means that it requires a 12 volts, a ground, and it outputs a signal for us. So I can use my little device here, and you can see it's got a flashing LED on, so I'm using the 12 volts and the ground. That tells me that the 12 volts and the ground are both working, and then obviously I feed the signal to it, and then we'll see the actual speed go up and down on the cluster. So I'm just going to put it into the test mode, which you'll be aware of if you watch any of my other videos. So you see you get the nice consistent flash over there. And what I'm going to try my best to do now is I'm going to try and get it both in the same shot. And you're going to see that as soon as I touch the yellow wire on there, you can see the speedo has gone right upwards. And there you go, and let go, and it goes back down again. Fantastic. Okay, so that tells me that all the way from the terminals right to the cluster, these connections and wires are all perfect, so no problem at all. Little tip for you guys when you're doing the speed signal, if you ever get to the stage, sometimes I think the speed sensors get knocked around when the engines come in and out. So if you're ever unsure and you just don't get a speed signal, obviously you've seen me test it here now, what you can do is just take the speed sensor out of the gearbox, get a friend to jump in the car, turn the ignition on. You can actually just literally take some tape and then strap a drill to the speed sensor. And get your friend to sit in the car, and obviously you just spin it with the drill, and if he sees a speed signal coming through there and the speed sensor is fine, then obviously clearly it's something wrong with the actual gearbox where the speed sensor is being rotated from there. But at least you can diagnose where the fault is. Okay. Next up is OBD2 machine. So obviously we want to see that it is connecting or working, and we are seeing live data. So you can see there I've got coolant temp, I've got intake air temperature, I've got ambient temperature, which has gone up to 16 degrees now, and so on and so forth. So super happy with that. It does communicate. Obviously it is plugged into our OBD2 plug that's in the ECU box over there. Right, as I said, we're going to move over to the fuel pump relay now. So we're going to go into active test. We're going to go into fuel pump, and we are going to activate the fuel pump. I'm going to try and keep quiet, and hopefully you can hear the relay clicking. Move the camera closer. Okay, so fingers crossed you heard that, but that was the relay clicking and actually the pump activating on there. So super happy with that. The ECU is able to control the fuel pump, no problem. Next up is the AC. So basically what I want to do from here is, I think the best thing to do is to create a new custom list on here, just so we don't have to look through a whole bunch of data that is unnecessary. Let me pop down to AC. Alright, let's go AC signal. I'll just do stop light switch while on there as well. So that's going to be our next thing, is the brake switch. Right, so my AC signal is off. I'm going to pop over here and press the button. Now, if you can listen closely. Right, so you can actually see that the AC magnetic clutch relay is activating. Now in that case, now we have 12 volts at our AC connector that we've added onto the harness. And you can see here that our AC signal is showing as on. And as soon as I press the button, it goes to off. Okay, so that's all perfect. So everything will work just fine. And remember, it's the pressure switch in the IS200 that controls whether or not the AC works or not. Okay, so just make sure that your pressure is okay. What I've done on this car here in particular is when the pressure's okay, either not too high, too low, it grounds out the switch. So in other words, all I've done basically is bridge the two wires at the old switch, which effectively has mimicked the fact that a pressure sensor is in there and it is grounded out. If you're not getting a ground on the pressure switch, that means the pressure is either too high or too low, and therefore the AC will not work in that particular case. Right, now I'm going to move over to the brake switch, and all I'm effectively going to do is literally just apply the brake light switch wire, which is standard in the vehicle, with 12 volts, because I no longer have a brake pedal in this. And what will happen is you'll hear the relay click. There you go, you heard the relay click over there. So let's go over to our machine and take a quick look, and you can see there, stop light switch is now on, which it went from off. Take that off of the power, and stop light switch has gone to off. So that is perfectly fantastic, exactly what I wanted to see. Okay, so that is all the testing with the ignition on. We're going to get ready, pop back in a second, and this is the testing with the engine running. So I'll see you in a second. Right, so now we're going to jump into the testing with the engine running, and as I said, it's really short and simple. So we're going to do starter circuit, make sure when you turn the key it starts, ACIS, make sure the valve has come down. We're going to rev the engine by pressing the accelerator pedal, test the oil control valve via the machine. We're going to go around and unplug each injector one by one to test that they are firing correctly. Pop back over, make sure we're getting a tacho signal through on the cluster. Also look at the coolant temp, which you can also already see the coolant temp showing through there, if you can see that. And then we'll go through the diagnostics. But first thing I need to do, get my ear defenders on so I don't go deaf. Rightio, so as I said, first thing we're going to do, start the engine up. So we're just going to do it from the key. Perfection. Right. So you can see now that valve has gone down. So that is absolutely perfect. Perfect. Right, then we're going to go to the oil control valve test. Right, so let's do bank one first. Pop over, and we're going to go into bank two. Rightio, so now we're going to move over and we're going to do injectors and coils. So let's start over here in the corner at number 7. So going to chop that off over there. Okay, so as you can see, the check engine light wasn't on when the engine was running. Obviously, the oil and the battery light went off as well. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go into the diagnostics. Now, on these 3UZ 6-speeds, obviously there is no ability to bridge TC to actually get it to flash the check engine light code. Unfortunately, that's a US and European thing. That's just the way that they've done it. But you will need a device in order to actually plug into the OBD, and you'll be able to get all of that data. Now, the nice thing with the 3UZ 6-speed is obviously provides CAN data. Okay, so if there's any particular reason that you guys wanted to fit some type of aftermarket dash inside the vehicle, be aware that you do have the ability to take all of that information via CAN from the standard ECU. So you can take engine RPM, coolant temp, the whole 9 yards. So if you ever did want to do that, basically you could let us know. We'll obviously help you out. We'll try and tap into the CAN wires that are going to the OBD2 connector, and then you have to run them obviously inside the vehicle towards your dash, and you can get all of that OBD2 CAN data from there. Okay, now then, as you can see on here, we've got absolutely zero codes. Now, as you're aware, obviously we've remapped the ECU. It's for a manual, so we've completely removed all the automatic gearbox software. The ECU now effectively is a factory supplied manual 3UZ in terms of electronics. We have done some other stuff as well. We get some gains low down in obviously torque and power where they sort of left something on the table. We do make the throttle obviously more responsive because that makes it feel a lot faster. Traditionally, these sort of drive-by-wire throttles in standard trim, especially in these luxury vehicles, is obviously quite soft and subdued, and you guys prefer to have a much more crisp throttle, so we do make the throttle response much better for you. Okay, now, just because you can't bridge TC and ground on the OBD2 port to flash codes does not mean you can't do it to check your timing. So, as per usual, you've got your timing here, you've got your 0, you've got your 5, you've got your 10, and you've got your 15. And on the crank pulley, if I can find it, and knowing my luck, it's either going to be behind the belt or it's going to be down on the bottom. Yeah, it's going to be down on the bottom. Anyway, there's a mark on your crank pulley there. I obviously paint mine white so you can really see it, but you can go into our OBD2 port over here, or in actual fact, I've connected TC into the standard vehicle because that is a wire that is available on the OBD2 connector inside the car. So you can, in this case, actually bridge the OBD inside the vehicle in order to put the 3UZ ECU into diagnostics mode. You can check the timing by putting your timing light round the cord of coil number 1, and then obviously using the wires over there. Let me just get some better lights on here for you guys. So there you go. So yeah, so you can basically wrap your clamp of your timing light around there, start the engine up, and obviously check your timing there. So it should be locked to 10 degrees, which is super important to know because obviously if you happen to leave paperclip, wire, whatever you were using to bridge that particular 2 terminals, please remove it when you're done, because if you lock the timing at 10 degrees, it's going to run really badly, as you can imagine. You're going to be super down on power and you're not going to have any clue why or what's going on. Okay. Right, but guys, that's it for this one. Tested everything, super happy with it. Obviously, we want to get this off. This is one of our trade customers. He's obviously wanted to get it installed in his customer's vehicle so the customer can be on their way in their V8 swapped IS200. So, again, we're going to get this off, get it over to him so he can get that done. If you guys have any questions, please let us know. If you guys have anything that you'd like me to do a video on that you're not 100% sure on, please let me know. The next time I have some example in the workshop, I will do a video on that specific subject. I try to do as many as I can. Obviously, it's just I don't know what you guys don't know. And you guys are sort of my inspiration for this. If you ask me questions and I can do a video on it, because usually if you have the question, somebody else has the exact same question. They just haven't asked it yet. So yeah, if you guys have any suggestions for videos, questions you might like to ask, please feel free to comment down below. You can also find us on Facebook at Phoenix Engine Management, and you can message us there, or you can message us at info@phoenixenginemanagement.com. Right, and obviously if you'd like a price on something like this, again, get in touch with us and then we can go through the requirements and what you want, because we can either use the existing harness and make an adaptation. We can also build brand new. So if you go look through our history of customer harness videos, you'll see where we've done these in the past for customers overseas, where shipping costs were prohibitively expensive. And we've actually made completely brand new harnesses here and sent them out all over the world to people. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. And if you like what you've seen, please tick the like button. If you don't like what you see, obviously tick the dislike button. If you have any suggestions to make these videos better, please let me know. But thanks for watching, and we'll see you again later.
Never break, always fight, never quit, do it right, play the game, win it life, have no shame, there's no time, feel the pain, live the grind, I could change, in my mind, pick a lane, commit and climb, the only way to win it life. I never miss, that's fact, taking big swings, hand me the bat, put me in the ring, you'll go out in a bag, cause I sing what I mean and I bring it to the mad light. Ain't got time to kill, I got time to feel, I took the red pill, I know life's short so I wanna live real, but how is it supposed to feel?